In this video, I'm going to react to the accurate story behind the Star Spangled Banner. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. This is the place where I react to music, media, sports, anime, anything related to popular culture. I'll watch it with an open mind and give you my 100% honest reaction to it. And if you could please hit that like button early, I'd really appreciate it. Now, this has been coming for quite some time. I reacted to the story behind the Star Spangled Banner about 3-ish months ago. And I found that story very interesting, fascinating story. You know, just hearing about how those soldiers, you know, it was just an amazing story. But then several people in the comment section were like, Kabir, this is not accurate. This isn't what really happened. You need to check this video out. And yeah, I just thought it was about time to see what actually happened. You know, what's the real story behind it? So let's go. This is going to be me reacting to the story behind the Star Spangled Banner. Let's do it. All right, the real story behind the Star Spangled Banner.
Have you ever gone to an athletic event and as someone was singing the national anthem, the people around you were not even paying attention? They didn't have their hand over their heart, they hadn't removed a hat from their head. Perhaps they were chatting with a friend and not even looking at the flag, just disengaged and disconnected. In a sense, by their casualness, they weren't just disrespecting the national anthem, they were disrespecting the men and women in the armed forces who have valiantly served our country. Those who've bled and died defending the freedoms of our nation. It is my belief that if you only knew the story behind the Star Spangled Banner, it would cause you to stand at attention, almost like a soldier yourself, with reverence and gratitude. You would sing the anthem with all of your heart, and in so doing, you would be telling the world how grateful you are to live in the greatest nation in the world, the United States of America. Let me tell you the story behind the Star Spangled Banner. There was a young lawyer by the name of Francis Scott Key who lived in Baltimore, Maryland in the early 1800s. At the time, our nation was engaged in vicious conflict with Britain. After the Revolutionary War, the British had suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of the United States, and up until 1814, they had been on the defensive. But in August 1814, determined not to be embarrassed again, the British saw their opportunity to get on the offensive. They exacted their revenge by capturing our nation's capital, Washington, D.C.
Is this where I think we burned the White House down, I think?
Chasing President Madison and his wife from the city and burning many of our government buildings. Then the British headed to Baltimore, the nation's third most populated city, to attack a fort called Fort McHenry. Along the way, Britain had accumulated prisoners, and we know that some of the prisoners had been placed aboard those British warships. One of the prisoners was a man named Dr. William Beans. Dr. Beans had many prominent friends and neighbors who enlisted the services of one Francis Scott Key to negotiate with the British for his release. Francis Scott Key agreed and arranged to have Colonel John Skinner, American agent for prisoner exchange, accompany him. On the appointed day, the men rowed out in a little boat and boarded a British ship to secure the release of Dr. Beans. After nearly a week of negotiations, they were successful. That's the good news. The bad news is that the British decided that they were first going to attack Fort McHenry and that they wouldn't release any prisoner until after the fort had been destroyed.
Wow.
You see, Fort McHenry was a strategically located military base which was defended by 1,000 men. It stood on the end of a peninsula guarding the...
Wow, the stars on this flag seem a lot less. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So at this time, there were only 15 states? Interesting.
The city of Baltimore. and the British knew that the defeat of Fort McHenry and its 1,000 men would serve as another demoralizing event for the Americans. So the plan of the British war fleet, which included some 16 to 19 warships, was to mercilessly fire their superior weapons and completely annihilate Fort McHenry. Then the British could send in its lighter ships up into the harbor and begin to bombard the rest of Baltimore. This is a critical moment in the history of our young nation. For even though we had become a sovereign nation in 1776, the United States was still fighting for total independence from the British due to Britain's interference in our expansion, trade, and other freedoms. On September 13, 1814, as morning dawned and as the haze hung over the ocean, the British war fleet was unleashed. Boom, 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 boom. For 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours. Boom, boom, the guns raged. The sound must have been deafening. Boom, boom, boom for 12 hours.
Man, just imagining witnessing that shelling, you know, the artillery shells just blasting around you. Horrific, you know, just seeing people getting blown to pieces left and right. That must really do, even if you survive that must just do a complete devastating damage to your psyche. I mean, hard to get over something like that. Don't even think it's truly possible, really.
15 hours, 20 hours, for 24 hours. The British war fleet pounded Fort McHenry relentlessly with no relief in sight. The Americans inside Fort McHenry were unable to respond because their guns were not as powerful as the British artillery. Witnessing the bombardment, it must have looked like a spectacular fireworks display. Francis Scott Key, he paced the ship all night long, back and forth. At times he could see the American flag in the illuminated red glare of each bomb. No doubt if he had seen a white flag waving, he would have known that the Americans were surrendering. But as long as he could see the red, white, and blue flag waving, he knew that the men inside that fort were not giving up. Don't you believe that there had to be some prisoners on board some of those warships who were wondering, is the flag still there? Is the flag still there? Is the flag still there? Because you see, that flag stood for the United States of America. It was that flag that stood for the freedoms that our nation cherishes today. It was that flag that stood for the men and women who died to give us our independence. Well, after more than 24 hours of constant bombardment, finally there was silence. And as morning dawned on September 14th, 1814, when the heavy mist and the smoke from the gunfire had lifted.
It's crazy. September 14th, 1814. That's not that long ago. That's barely 200 years ago. You know, that's like 3 human lifespans. I mean, it's just mad to think that life back then, that was what life was like. Yet it was so, you know, fairly recent. It's fascinating.
There, standing proudly, flying high above the rampart, blowing back and forth in the wind, was the huge 30-foot by 42-foot American flag.
Wow, 30 foot, that's a massive flag.
Major George Armistead, the commander of Fort McHenry, had commissioned a widow to make this flag. He wanted it to be so large that the British wouldn't have any trouble seeing it from the distance, waving proudly. Miraculously, the damage to the fort was minimal.
Wow.
Of the 1,000 soldiers, 4 were killed.
Wow. Like, not to say that 4 lives lost is good in any way, but relative to the amount of troops stationed there, you know, that's a 0.04 or 0.4 kill rate. You know, for 5 hours of bombardment, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. But obviously, rest in peace to those 4 men lost.
The United States did not yield. and the British eventually withdrew from the Baltimore harbor, deeming the battle to be too costly.
Wow.
The tide of the war was reversed. There at the Battle of Fort McHenry, just a few months later, a peace treaty was signed between the United States and Britain. It was upon the release of the prisoners that Francis Scott Key made his way back into Baltimore. And after such a dramatic and emotional occasion, the young lawyer was inspired to pen the following words. "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?" It is my prayer that whenever we see the flag, which represents the United States of America, and whenever we hear the words of the Star-Spangled Banner as it is sung, that we would stand in reverence for the miraculous events of that night in 1814, to honor the courageous men and women who have fought to keep our flag waving. May we always stand. May we always remove our hats. May we always place our hand over our hearts. And may we always sing with all of our heart as we give honor and respect to the flag and to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for this great nation of ours, the United States of America.
He did a tremendous job, you know, very moving. That man, I don't think they actually said his name. I'm going to try and find it. Dudley Rutherford. He did a tremendous job. Very, very well done. I was just finding myself just so immersed. That's why I was barely saying anything. I was just so transfixed on what he was saying. You know, there's a lot of truth there. You know, it's just that the people that lay down their lives, the people that go, you know, they're commanded to certain areas in the world, you know, and they pay the ultimate price for their nation, you know, for America. You know, those people, they must be, you know, their sacrifice must be honored and respected, I think. You know, it's only right. And yeah, just an amazing video. Really, really well done. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and keep throwing the recommendations my way. I know I say it all the time, but they genuinely help me out, because if I know you enjoyed watching something, I'll definitely enjoy reacting to it. So like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, keep throwing the recommendations, and I'll catch you in the next one.